Men, it's time to have the sex talk you never got. Sam Jolman is here to break the silence, tackle the shame, and help men reclaim their sexuality with confidence, purpose, and joy. This isn't the talk you thought you needed, it's the one you actually do.
This is Manlihood, the podcast for men who want to rise up and live with purpose. With your host, Josh Hatcher, this show is here to help you level up as a husband, father, leader, and man, with real conversations and strategies to help you in every area of your life.
Welcome to Manlihood, the podcast where men are forged in wisdom, truth, and purpose, where we help men become even better men. And around here, no topic is taboo. Today we're talking about sex. I'm your host, Josh Hatcher, and today we're going to dive into this conversation. And it's a conversation that most men have really never had, and they desperately need. Sam Jolman is a therapist, a writer, an expert on men's issues, marriage, and sexual wholeness. For 20 years, he's helped men untangle the confusion, shame, and silence surrounding their sexuality. His new book, The Sex Talk You Never Got, is a game changer. It challenges everything we thought we knew about masculinity, desire, and faith. So, before we get into this, I just want to remind you, make sure that you subscribe to this channel so that you can get notifications. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast on whatever app you're listening to so that you can keep up to date on the newest and latest episodes. Also, make sure you join the Man Cave, the Manlihood Man Cave on Facebook. It's our private Facebook group for men where you can unpack a lot of the things that we're talking about here, and you can have discussions with a group of guys that want to help build each other up. It's a great community, and the guys really do have each other's backs. And really, honestly, we don't have a lot of rules there, but one of the rules we have is don't make me make any new rules. So just don't be a jerk, okay? I rarely have to step in and kick anybody out. Most of the time, people respect the fact that this is a place where we can interact with the goal of building each other up. So if that's you, if you need that in your life, if you want to do that for other men, join the Facebook group. We'd love to have you. So without further ado, guys, we're going to get into this conversation with Sam Jolman. If you've ever wrestled with your identity, struggled with shame, wondered how to reclaim a healthy, God-given view of sexuality, this episode is for you. So let's have the talk you never got. Let's dive in. Sam, it is great to have you on Manlihood. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well, Josh. Thanks for having me. This is super fun.
Yeah, like we've been talking before we hit record and having all kinds of fun conversations. So you're out in Colorado.
Yes.
Did you say Colorado Springs? Is that what you said?
Yep, Colorado Springs.
Yeah, that's like the epicenter of evangelicalism, right? Isn't that what we call that?
Well, what's weird is they say that, but we're actually one of the most underchurched communities, even in Colorado. So there's only 18% of people here that go to church.
So
it's kind of a ghetto, an evangelical ghetto now. There's certainly Compassion International, Focus on the Family, some of the big players in evangelical world, but the community itself is actually fairly only 18% of people here go to church.
So it's just that you just got a couple of big organizations that set up their headquarters there.
Yeah.
Okay.
YWAM, Young Life. Yeah. A couple of big places.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So they all commute in is what it is.
Well, I think they live in the community. I just don't know that the community itself, we have Fort Carson. So we have a large military, kind of a big military town. We're kind of a big mountain town in a lot of ways. We have the beauty of Pikes Peak and we get all of the like mountain lions, bobcats, bears. We were talking about bears before we started and mule deer. And so I'm pushed right up against the foothills where my house actually is. And so it's a beautiful place to live. But yeah, kind of a Christian ghetto in a weird way.
Yeah. Yeah, so where I'm at in Bradford, Pennsylvania, we're near the Allegheny. We're right in the middle of the Allegheny National Forest, along the border of New York State, which is like along Allegheny State Park, which isn't quite as big as the National Forest, but it's kind of like this little thumb on top of that into New York State, and then it goes down. I mean, miles and millions and millions of acres of just national forest, and it's just
beautiful.
And so, yeah, we've got all this kind of wildlife, same thing. And we were talking before we hit record about roadkill. Yeah, dude. So what were you were talking about a friend or somebody?
Yes.
Yeah. Tell me about that.
Well, so mule deer are not as skittish as whitetail. So they hang out in, you can feed them and such, but I have a friend who calls October, November roadkill season. And he's gotten in with the Department of Wildlife guys here in town that will go out to, when somebody in suburbia hits one of these deer, he's got some buddies that will let him come out and harvest the deer and keep it for himself, keep the antlers or whatever. There's also a wolf sanctuary, actually, that they will sometimes harvest these deer for. But he gives away a lot of the meat. He tries to give away a lot of the meat to the underprivileged that he knows, families that could actually really could make a difference to get, 50 pounds worth of meat in their freezer could mean a lot of help to them financially. So, but yeah, roadkill season, it's coming up.
I got a buddy that from here too, and we have a lot of roadkill here too because there's so many whitetail. While they're skittish, there's a lot of them. At least there used to be. I think we overhunted for a while, and now the population is starting to climb back up. But anyway, he used to carry a thermometer in his car because he would take the temperature when he would drive by a roadkill to see, like, is this safe to eat?
Yeah.
And he'd take it home and he'd have us over for dinner, and dude, he fed us. We had so much roadkill. And he knew when it was safe. And so we never got sick. He knew. So I didn't trust roadkill from just anybody. This guy knew what he was doing.
Yeah.
And, dude, he was nuts. So
my buddy has stories. He lives in suburbia himself, but I've called him and said, dude, deer down, and you give him the road, and he's come and picked him up a couple times and sent me a text back like, dude, that thing was skunk. It was all green inside. But he's famously has legs and head sticking out of his trash can. So when the guy comes to take his trash, he's got deer legs sticking out of it. And I guess the guy just knows it's Morgan. So
and I've hit lots of deer myself. Unfortunately, every time that I hit one, I'm in a position where it's you hit it so hard that you can't get anything good off that deer. You're on your way to work and you don't have time to process that deer.
Right.
It's great, thanks. So, or one time I hit a deer on the way to work and I got to work and I'm like, guys, I hit a deer. And they're like, did you get the meat? And I'm like, no. Well, go get it. Well, you're fine. Don't worry about it. Go get the meat and then just save some of it for us. And when I went back, it was already gone. Somebody grabbed it. So,
nice.
Anyway,
room only.
Yes, exactly. Now, we're not here to talk about roadkill, though. I just thought we'd, hit that up because that was a fun conversation to open. That was fun. I think that was kind of born out of the cool, fun map behind you because we were talking about the wilderness a little bit when we were starting our conversation. But
yes.
So, Sam, tell me about the work that you do. Your book is called
The Sex Talk You Never Got. Yeah. Reclaiming the heart of masculine sexuality, and attempting to. I wanted a little sub story from the publishing process. I wanted to say rousing the heart of masculine sexuality. My publisher thought that might be a step too far, and might turn off readers. And I get that in a marketing sense. But my heart here is I'm trying to bless something in men that has gone unblessed through the book. So the Sex Talk You Never Got. It's not just that you missed out on information, right? Eventually you kind of figure out how the mechanics work of sex, right? The birds and the bees. But, so few men have had meaningful conversations around their sexuality. Maybe they got, a quick and often shoddy anatomy lesson, or if you're in Christian communities, a purity lecture, right? Don't screw it up. Just don't do it. Don't feel anything sexual, is kind of what it ends up equating to. And that's it. And often it was awkward and short, if men got anything at all. And, when there's something in your life that goes unaddressed, or, in a community of people, if there's a topic or a subject or a story that, hey, we just don't talk about this, right? We kind of all know that thing holds a lot of shame, right? Like, oh, don't bring this up with so-and-so, right? It inherently has shame. So if there's something you don't talk about, it will inherently feel shameful to go there. And so I'm trying to address how men end up absorbing this sense of, my sexuality should just work. I should just behave. It's not worth a lot of attention. And I think it's left men to figure so much of their sexuality out on their own. Again, I'm not just saying the plumbing. I'm talking, how do you integrate it into being a good man, other than it seems like what most men have is the idea of lust or don't lust, right? Sin or don't sin. And whatever you're doing in your sexuality, just make sure it's not sin or not lust. And there's no way then to have a deeper conversation about, the romance talk, or even our stories of sexual harm that 1 in 6, the stats say, men carry. But that's most certainly low, because men are 4 times less likely to talk about their sexual abuse than women. So men are notoriously silent about that category. Anyway, I know I'm jumping into the deep end here, but I'm trying to say there's a deeper conversation to have here, and trying to rouse the heart of masculine sexuality. Well, like, this is a good part of you. It was created good. And what would that good look like in the world? And getting it out of the sex jokes, locker room talk. If men talk at all, it's that, to where we could have a more significant conversation about sexuality.
Yeah, I think it's hard for us to talk about it, one, without shame, because we feel dirty talking about it. You're right. Or we only kind of cheer it on and talk like in the joking kind of. Yeah. Why is that?
Again, I mean, it baffles me still, right? I just wrote a book on it, but there are a couple of things I think play into it. I mean, there are, it's some of the place of, I think for men, some of the place of their greatest suffering for a lot of guys. There's not a lot of room to talk about your story, meaning like what shaped you sexually, or, for example, I was at a Friendsgiving a couple years ago, right? So it's a group of friends that gathered around Thanksgiving, just as friends, and to have a Thanksgiving meal. We met on Wednesday and before the Thanksgiving day. And these were guys, there were 3 other families, guys that I don't see on the regular, but, friends in our community. And so we were catching up on life, and they were asking, what are you up to? And so I was telling these guys, I'm writing this book called The Sex Talk You Never Got. This was a couple years ago when I was in the middle of it. And one of the guys all leaned in right away. And they're like, oh my gosh, like, I need that book yesterday. Like, said one of the guys. And another guy said, if I'm honest, sexuality has been the place of some of my greatest struggle and greatest suffering in my marriage. And I can't wait to, like, I need to know how to have a deeper conversation about this. So, that's an example of, here are guys just at a Friendsgiving gathering, right? And you bring up this topic and they have so much that they want to talk about. Or, my day job is I'm a therapist, I'm a counselor. So I sit with a lot of married couples, men are some of my specialties, and sexual abuse recovery. But it's amazing to me how often I sit with men. Like this happened a couple months ago, and this client has given me permission to share this. But he's a contractor, construction. We meet over video in the cab of his truck on his lunch break is when he does his counseling. And he says, so he's in the confines of his cab, and he says to me, as a man, I know I'm supposed to always just be ready to get it up and always ready to have sex. And that's all I should want as a man is sex, right? But he said, I actually need and want the emotional stuff with my wife. I want the connection and the romance. I don't want to just get released, so to speak. But I want more. I'm missing my wife right now. He's in a season where there was high demand for their family, and they hadn't had a lot of time together. But here's a guy, right, almost whispering to me in the secret of counseling, like, I know I'm not supposed to want this stuff, right? What is that holds men? I've had other guys say to me, like, I feel like I'm more like the woman in the relationship because I actually want connection. I want to talk. I want to relate. And I don't just want sex. So there's this thing, I think, in male culture that, right, that's to be the woman. What is that? Why does that hold men? There's some culture around, sex, just give a man his sex and his food and he's good, right? Maybe you've heard sentiments like that. And that's so, first of all, diminishing to men. It's so untrue. Men don't just want sex. And even the guys that would say, well, no, I think I do just want sex, right? It doesn't take a lot of scratching below the surface before they start to realize, actually, you're right. That's not just what I want here. Because as soon as you start to ask them, like, well, what do you love about sex, right? They'll say things like, I love to feel wanted. I love to feel desired. Or it's the only time I feel my wife's passion for me. Or I love to feel pursued. There's a therapist who said, she's talking about men here. And she says, I'd want sex too if it was all the time. If it's the only place I was allowed to get physical touch other than the football field. Meaning like, try to be a man and ask for hugs, right? And again, I know that there are men who have owned their deeper needs and they know how to walk into all that they want: relational connection, physical connection, not just sex. But I think as a culture in masculinity, those things are still a bit taboo to say, like, I actually like deep conversation with my wife. I actually want more than that.
Yeah. I think that, even like the most, selfish guy who thinks it's all about sex, right? And like even in that situation, there's a feeling that he's chasing with it, right?
Right.
It's like it's that he feels even if he's like the jerkiest controlling guy, it's
right.
that sense of control, that sense of, you know what I mean? There's something that he's getting out of it. Like it makes him feel powerful. It makes him feel, do you know what I mean? Like It's not about just the sex. Like, the sex there's something there, obviously, but there's something internal there that we're chasing.
Yeah. Right. And, whether it's comfort, like I had a client, again, somebody that's given me permission to share this. This was a woman who said, I always knew what kind of day my husband had based on how he had sex with me that night. And she said there were days where he didn't have a good day and everything went wrong for him. And I became the thing at the end of the day that he needed to conquer. And she said sex felt like the thing that he had to conquer to feel better about himself that day, right? Because nothing went his way. And she said it was terrible. It was a terrible experience because it wasn't really relating to me. It wasn't really intimacy. And if I spoke up saying I didn't like it, or trying to invite him to attend to her pleasure, even in it, he wouldn't have it. It was like he was charging towards, he needed to feel better, right? So even that guy, right, who's pretty cut off from his heart, is trying to get some sort of validation, comfort, right? He needs to feel better about his day. And my challenge is, I wonder what a good conversation with his wife could have helped with, right? Like, what if he had been able to talk about his day first? And again, I'm not saying that having sex is bad when you want comfort. It's good. It's just, how do you bring your heart along? How do you show up well to it so that you're present and able to relate, right? Not just getting release, but really connecting to all that sex stirs in you.
So here's the question that I think about a lot with this. So why is it so hard to talk about sex with your partner? And the reason I ask that is because I have a really good relationship with my wife. Now my wife's probably listening to this podcast, so she's gonna be like, "What do you mean it's hard to talk about sex?" So
she can put notes in the
didn't mean to speak about my wife
podcast
with that tone. She doesn't talk like that. She's like, I don't talk like that, because I didn't. But she doesn't talk like an angry cat. You know what I mean? Being chased by a person ready to eat them. No, she doesn't talk like that. But why do, like, I think this is a common thing. A husband and a wife try to talk about sex. It feels uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want her to think that she's not doing a good job, that she's not pleasing me.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And if I say I need this, or I want this, or can we do it this way, or can I, like, or maybe we should, like it's hard to have those conversations.
That's right.
When you start talking about your needs or things that you want, or maybe, or maybe I don't even know what I need or what I want. Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And being able to talk about that intimate space, it almost feels like I don't want to devalue her in any way when we have those conversations. So why would, you know what I mean? It's hard. And I know it's the same with her. She doesn't, when I've recently lost a lot of weight, it was really hard for her to tell me that my weight was causing issues. Do you know what I mean? Because she didn't want to hurt my feelings, but it was causing problems. And so we didn't talk about it a lot, but I knew it was there. It was
right.
Literally the elephant in the room. You know what I mean? Like, why is that so hard for people to have those conversations with each other?
Yeah. I think even in long-term committed marriages, expressing desire, sexual desire, there's still a vulnerability and a risk that it takes to, bring your desire to your partner, even a long-term partner. And obviously I think that you can get better at trusting the other person in the conversation, but long-term marriages, it is still a risk of vulnerability. I mean, there's a reason that we talk about use being naked as a symbol of vulnerability, right? Like, oh, I felt so naked, right? When you feel embarrassed or exposed, right? Like, or, the being naked in front of people dreams, right? Those are usually dreams about vulnerability or shame, right? I felt exposed. I felt embarrassed. It's because, nakedness represents vulnerability. There's a writer who said, if the heart is not naked along with the body, the whole thing is a lie. That there's something important about how your heart shows up in the act of being naked with another person. But think about that. I mean, you're not naked, probably with anyone else, maybe a locker room, right? Other than your spouse. There's a vulnerability there that I think represents the nakedness that's intended for the heart. So sharing your deepest desires requires your heart to show up and be put on the line. Risk is not just a metaphor. It's literal. You're risking your deepest desires and what somebody will do with that. And the other thing I'd say is, you can talk about sexuality. You can talk about other things. Like, I suppose we could talk about, deer and migration patterns of deer pretty cerebrally, right? We're not going to be much. You can talk about it kind of disconnected, or we could talk about math pretty disconnected. But sexuality is one of those topics, I believe, as soon as you begin to talk about it, you're in your body. You're in your story as well. Like, we all bring to sex our own story of sexual development, and which for a lot of us, at some level, all of us, involves moments of shame. And to risk opening back up can provoke that sense of shame or fear. So I think there's a tenderness that is inherent to the topic, even in long-term marriages.
What do you think, as we look at just overall, the thing that men really need to know about their own sexuality? Obviously, I don't mean to sum it all down to the thing, right? Because there's probably a lot we need to know. But where do we start with learning about this and really getting a good grasp on it? Where do we need to start?
Yeah, I would say that the place that I start in chapter 1 of the book is, you are a lover. We don't have lover as a category for masculinity that much. It's an archetypal category. We have warrior, right? Or worker, king, right? We have these more, those feel more masculine. But what I'm fighting for in the book is, you are actually a lover through and through. And what I mean by that is, you were created to experience the sensuality of life. By sensuality, I don't just mean sexuality. The senses, your senses were created to give you pleasure in life, whether that's last night's sunset or last night's sex, right? Or last night's cigar that you had, right, on your back porch, right? Those are all sensual experiences. Or the steak that you grilled, that you thought you nailed, right? That's all sensuality. And you're created for that. In fact, I would say most men live for, work hard, play hard. They live for the sensuality of life, whether that's, my friends and I joked that we, here in Colorado, we hunt elk. We call it, armed solitude or armed hiking, right? Because a lot of it is, yes, it's for the elk, but a lot of it is just to get out in the woods. Mm-hmm. Talk about the sensuality of the woods, the wilderness, right? Or I went fly fishing a couple of weeks ago. My goodness. I caught 4 fish for like 6 hours, and I had the best time because it wasn't just about the fish. I'm in this beautiful place on a river, right? You are a lover as a man, and it shows up in your love of the beauty of a river, the beauty of a trout, the beauty of making love to your wife, the beauty of a sunrise or sunset, right? The good stuff of life, right? The beauty of a well done steak that you nailed. That's what I want to invite. That's the heart that I think men need to own, is this is a really good part of you, and sexuality really mirrors the way that you were created sensually to take in the pleasure of life. And you're a lover in terms of how you make love to your wife, but you're a lover in terms of, your companionship with your dog, right? Watch a man with his dog. They're so clear. It invokes in a man his love. That's the basis and the heart of your sexuality. And you have to find a way to bring that to the conversation.
I can see that 100%. I think that when you really get down to the heart of that, yeah, because it's about love. And I think that as long as we view it like a craving, right? Like I've got a hankering for a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, right? Then that is like I've got a hankering for some heroin, right? It's not that's about gratification. And it's not the same thing. It's not the same thing.
Right. That's not making love as much as getting a release. So a lot of, this idea that men need sex, right? It's a lie. Nobody's ever died for lack of sex. So it's not a need like you need oxygen. It's not a sex drive. That language as well isn't accurate. You won't die without it, right? A drive is for things like food and oxygen and shelter and safety and, the basics and water, right? You need those. Those are a drive. But sex is not a drive. It's a desire. And at times it might feel like a very strong desire, but it won't kill you if you don't get it. So it's not a drive. Most of the time, my sense is when men say, gosh, it feels like a need, right? Now, obviously, some of that is interactions with your own hormones in your body, right? Your own sense of physical responses in your body to what's happening. But most of the time, my sense is what's needed for men is comfort, some sort of emotional regulation. They're stressed out, or they're overwhelmed with something in their life. It could be guilt. It could be anything, shame, hunger, anger, right? And they feel a desire for release or comfort, something in their body. And, sex is or orgasm is a great vasodilator. It will dilate your blood vessels. You will feel de-stressed physically, right? You will feel release and the biochemical response in your body of endorphins and relaxants, right? You will feel physically something change in your body. But is that the same as getting what you need, comfort and connection and really working through the things going on in you? No. It's why, this is the place I first go with guys when they talk about struggling with sexually acting out with pornography or something, right? Is what's driving that habit? Most of the time it's something's overwhelming in my life and I need some sort of comfort or soothing. And this is the way, a kind of malformed way of trying to get soothing. So I think as you're saying, there's a difference between making love and I just need some sort of release in my body, some sort of soothing. Those feel very different.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that if we can learn to, well, and here's the thing too, is like, so for me, early in our marriage, I struggled with porn and masturbation, and it was damaging to our relationship. One, because I hid it and lied about it, that is its own issue. And when I got control, I'm going to use quotations around that, of that issue, I just transferred it to food and I got fat. I gained a lot of weight. And the other way that I controlled it is I just dialed my sex drive way down. You know what I mean? And so, our relationship wasn't as close and wasn't as intimate because I just channeled that need into something else. Do you know what I mean? Which was food and laziness. And, and it drove some wedges in between us as a couple, and for years, for a long time. And now, now that I've started to recognize and work on those places in me and recognize how I used food to comfort and soothe those places in me that were broken, and now start to kind of bring healing into those places and recognize that and see that. And recognize that it wasn't my wife's job to soothe and heal those places. Right. I mean, they did, like, that relationship did help make those things feel better. Like it does help that. It does make that feel better. But that's not the point of our sexual relationship, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
like having that with her did make me feel better and does make me feel better. But that's not the point of our relationship.
Right.
It's
And it's
like a side effect of our relationship. Like
right. Yeah.
and so and I didn't like it. It always kind of felt a little dirty to get that from her that way. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so now we're at a place where it's like getting my drive where it needs to be, getting my health where it needs to be, so that I can give her what she needs from me the way that it needs to be. So our relationship is kind of different and becoming different and healthier now as I've been getting my body, physically healthy where it needs to be. And we're getting there, it's a different place,
Yeah.
but that's been a journey, dude. Like just recognizing that like sometimes, and I think most guys just refuse to look under the surface on the inside and just
that's right.
Dude, you're broken inside and
Yeah.
it's okay. And you need to start working on that.
Yes. And to understand it's not just an issue of sin, so to speak, as you're naming so well, like it, and it's not just when I talk about the need for soothing or comfort, you put it so well. It's not just a need for like the daily, like something in your day that needed soothing, right? It's also the healing in your own story.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think of, when my wife and I first got married, I struggled with pornography initially as well. And was the rhythm of our sex life, didn't get off to a good start, so to speak. And I was invited through that process to go to counseling to start to unpack like what is showing up for me in my sexuality. What is happening here for me? And thank God I took that deeper look, because beginning to understand that there were things in my past, stories of sexual abuse, stories of sexual harm, right, that had shaped me, and things that maybe didn't meet a, like a box definition of sexual abuse. Well, I wasn't ever molested, right? What are you talking about, right? But to begin to understand there are things that can shape us that maybe at first didn't feel like much. Like, I think of what guys say to me in counseling when we start to go down this path. They'll say, oh yeah, there was some weird stuff that happened when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And or they'll say things like, well, I plan to take some of this stuff to my grave. Like, I think it's me. It feels like I'm the pervert or I'm the weird one from some of these stories. But to understand that some of those stories have shaped you powerfully and have created this like limp to how you walk out your sexuality as an adult. And so it's not just the stresses of the day, but I'm thinking of your word healing. Like, you may have sexual wounds from your story that you're carrying as your shame, but are actually wounds that need to be healed so that you can show up differently in your body and in your sexuality.
Sam, I think I get really frustrated by the statistics, because you said it's 1 in 6. That's the people that have come forward for statistics' sake and said, this has happened to me, right?
Yes.
And I know the statistic, it's 1 in 6 boys under the age of 18 have come forward and said that they have been sexually abused or molested by the time they're 18. And that is not the same as people who have been exposed to pornography before the age of 18.
Well
right?
said.
That's not the same, which that is a damaging thing, because that number is more like 99%, right?
Right. Yep.
And depending on the nature of how that exposure happened, right? Because how that exposure happened is also an issue. Because if it's just stumbled across it, that's one thing. If it's being shown it like by an older person, that's actually sexual abuse. So that number changes, right?
Exactly.
Then that doesn't include the people who just never talked about it, right? Because they don't want to expose anybody. That doesn't include what some people call just, oh, that's just kids stuff because kids are experimenting. And a lot of times psychologists don't call that sexual abuse, but in a lot of ways it can be just as traumatic.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't include, a lot of things that really
ways that.
that.
Well said. Right. Ways, I was just going to add it to that. Ways that you were sexualized as a kid through relationship, or the way that you provided an emotionally, what's called emotional incest, a way that you provided, emotional support for your parent, right? Can actually impact your sexuality. If you felt like you were made your mom's husband, right? Or caregiver, or your dad's confidant even, right? That can impact you. You're saying it so well that there are subtle, quote unquote, right? Things that don't fit a box definition. Because the 1 in 6 is the box definition, like men that have physically been molested, physically, right? Yeah. But outside of that is, and that's even low in terms of who's willing to be honest about it. Right. Because it's terrifying to admit. It feels embarrassing and shameful.
So I think the truth is that every one of us has something in that area of our life that if we're honest and if we can evaluate it, we've got something that we probably should at least talk through and think and work so that we can say, okay, how can I become a better lover for my spouse? Or if we're even single, how can I better channel this part of my life?
Yes.
That's just my take on it. I think like how can I, I think that's something that a lot of people just don't want to think about, is that like becoming the best version of you in general is not, like, a lot of people just look at life and like, I'm good, I'm fine. No, how can you become better? Well, what can you work on?
Right.
Right. And so if we're looking at sex, what can you work on? How can it get better? What do you need to work on? And sometimes that might mean digging into stuff that you don't want to look at.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Josh, that was a profoundly good riff that you went on. You're nailing it. That is like if I could stand up and cheer, I would say you are saying it 100% correct. Every man has something in his story of sexual growth that harmed him, right? Evil hates your sexuality. Evil wants to join your sexuality to shame. And I believe that there are ways that evil comes early in all of our stories to bring harm to you, to set up moments of harm, but at least to whisper to you about things, even about your own sexual curiosity, right? That will set you up to feel like you're weird, you're perverted, something's wrong with you. And then you will show up to life in adult sexuality with a limp. You will not be the wholehearted lover that you were created to be. So taking that risk to look deeper, it could be a conversation with your wife. Like, I want to risk talking more openly about sex, but it could be maybe you need to step back into your own story and look at what's showing up in your sexuality.
And that might also mean calling somebody like what you do with your day job and sitting down with somebody and working through some things, which I think a lot of guys are very averse to. Honestly, I struggle personally with sitting down with a counselor. I had a couple bad experiences in that regard with some things. And so I'm like, I don't like some of these guys. You know what I mean? So it makes me uncomfortable, and I don't trust a lot of people with that. I had a good counselor, moved away. I know I could do Zoom calls with him if I wanted to, you know what I mean? But, so I get it. But a lot of times, because of the way that I do what I do, a lot of times I just talk with my buddies, and I have some buddies that we can get deep, and that's also helpful. Maybe it's not as helpful as a pro, but it's helpful.
Right.
But
right. And I mean, yes. So finding a counselor, you're right. It may take a couple swings and a miss to find somebody that you trust, because you have to be able to trust them. You have to find somebody that is going to treat you with care and treat your story with care. And that might take a while. The other option I'd give is, like you're saying, to develop a community around you to have these conversations. And it could be as simple as, Sit down with the notes app on your phone, sit down with a journal, write out the top 10 things that shaped you sexually. Just bullet point. What are 10 stories of your sexual growth? Right? When did you first learn about it? Oh yeah, then there was this story on the playground. And then this. Oh, and then, write down the broken heart moments or the girls that you thought were cute. And, write down all the 10 to 15 stories that have shaped you. And then sit back and look at that. What's that story? Another thing that you can do as a man that will get you to your story very quickly is, what do you, for somebody that has struggled or still struggles with looking at pornography, what do you type into Google, right? Most guys don't type porn, search, click. Most guys have certain things that they type in that are, keywords for their arousal story, right? What's your arousal structure? What gets you off, so to speak, right? And just sitting with what you type into Google will be a clue into your story. Meaning, I had a guy that told me this story of, this is a client, and again, he's given me permission. He tells the story of his wife asked him after work to go to the grocery store and pick some things up, goes to the grocery store, forgets something, gets home, she's irritated. Understandable. And maybe she's in a bad mood herself, right? It's human. But it really takes him out. He's disappointed his wife. And that night he looks at porn and comes in to talk with me, confesses, hey, I looked at porn. I want to talk about it, which is always a brave admission. And so we start talking about it. And I ask him, what was he looking for? Right? It may not be what you even type always, but what are you hunting for? You've got something like 700 years worth of pornography on one website alone. One of the top porn websites, 700 years worth of what? 3 to 5 minute clips you have so much you could click on. What leads you to click on what you do? So I'm asking this guy that question, and he says, and this is a man who's done a little bit of work. He says, I think if I'm honest, I was looking for a woman with a really genuine smile. And he starts crying. And that became this door into his wife had been irritated with him. He did not have her smile. And that night he went looking for a woman that would give him a real smile. Now, again, is it a real woman giving him a real smile? No. That's the self-harm of pornography. It's not actually giving him what he wants, but it was a clue to what he wanted. We began to talk even more about his own story, that the only time he got his mother's smile is when he was giving her back rubs. And she was able to talk about all the heartache she has for his father, right? Yeah. So can you begin to see how that ache for a smile got sexualized? When he began to play the confidant role for his mother is when he got a smile from her. That's all buried in his internet pornography search when he got brave and honest about it. So again, please go see a therapist. That'd be awesome. But also sit down and just ask questions about your own sexual arousal or the top 10 to 15 things that you look at. The top 10 to 15 things that have shaped you from your story, right? Those can be ways into the healing you need as well.
I will also warn you, just from somebody who's been doing that work, is that don't expect it to just get better instantly overnight either.
Yes.
Like it takes some time. Like, you didn't get yourself into a mess overnight. Right. So it's not like you're just gonna flip a switch and now everything's better. Like, it's gonna take some time. Just like I didn't get fat overnight, I'm not gonna get skinny overnight, but it's taking time and work to get better, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that makes sense to me. So
mm-hmm.
You got to do work to get yourself if you're in a mess, it takes some work to get out of the mess.
Right. These are habits that have kept you from your pain. So you have to recognize when you start to do this work, you're going to be moving towards pain. I would also say you're going to be moving towards healing, but you have to pass through the pain. You have to engage things that are dangerous that you've wanted to bury because they've been too overwhelming for you. And so that is a very good warning you're giving, is you might find that it spikes your desire to numb with pornography use because you've actually opened up the pain. So be aware. I would also say evil doesn't want you healed. The realm of evil doesn't want you whole. And so to recognize that as you step towards healing, you might find temptation spikes. Even because of that, it does not want you alive and well. It wants you stuck in shame and hating yourself.
I know when it comes to shame, the one thing it's always helpful for me to recognize and remember is, dude, you're not alone. Like, you're not weird. Like,
yes,
like we're all screwed up and
yes.
figuring it out.
Yes.
So don't think you're some like that's why I try to be real with the things that I'm going through and have gone through, because like, and people look at me like I you know, I sometimes I'll preach in church, you know, and I got up in church one time and I started talking about my past and the things I've struggled with. And these people came up to me like, that was so brave. And like, for me, that didn't feel brave at all because I share it and I talk about it all the time. And I'm like, that didn't really feel that brave, but I just realized, I don't know if anybody's ever stood on that stage up there and talked about, admitted to looking at pornography.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I realized, oh yeah, I guess that did take some courage. But then again, I've also been on a podcast where I've shared to almost 1 million people that I've done that. So for me, that didn't feel weird to share that in front of 150 people. Do you know what I mean? For me, that was no big deal. But to that person, that was a lot of courage. Do you know what I mean? And so I guess my point though is that, like, guys, this is whatever it is that you're going through, whether you're struggling with your relationship with your wife, whether you're struggling with pornography, whether you're struggling with, dude, just like any of it. Maybe you're just like, maybe things are going good and you're like, I just want it to be a little bit better. Or maybe you're having some sexual dysfunction, dude. Hey, I've been having that. You know, talk to your doctor, get some testosterone replacement therapy if you're in your 40s and stuff isn't working right. Like, that happens. Like, you're not alone. Right. Don't feel like a freak. Like, we're all screwed up.
Right. Yes. Well said. I mean, we all have things in our story that are shameful or wounding or painful. We all have a story. And I'm not just talking about stories of things you've screwed up, but things that have been done to you. We all have struggles, even in the present, as you're naming well. 85% of couples will have physical sexual dysfunction. 85%, essentially everyone, right, will have at some point in their long-term relationships, in their marriage, physical sexual dysfunction, not just emotional struggles or relational struggles. So the plumbing doesn't just work. Sexuality isn't this thing that's meant to just not be talked about and, go and it just works. You need to be able to have spaces that you can open up.
Yeah. The Hollywood does not do you any favors in porn. Porn does not do you any favors in showing how things are supposed to work, because they never work like the movies and pornography shows you it works.
Right. And that kind of damage and pain. I mean, those guys literally are taking shots in their genitalia to be able to function. So, and the amount of drug use that's needed even to survive that industry, it's not real.
Yeah, for the porn industry. And then the movie industry, they're not even doing it. They're putting socks on and then rubbing around and making it look like they're doing it.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So it's like one, they're doing something to, like, they're exaggerating it to make it look exciting. And in the other industry, they're faking it to make it look exciting. And neither of them are real.
Right. Yep.
Neither of them are real.
Right. Yeah. It does set us up.
Dude. So, we could probably talk about sex all day long.
Yes.
That's what you do, though, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
Sam, I like to ask all my guests a couple questions. If you've got a minute a few minutes more for me to ask them. The first question: what does it take to be a man?
I think here's the irony. I think of what it takes to be a man. It takes becoming human. So the more you pursue being human, the more you humanize yourself. Actually, I think the more you become a man. So I think you have all the masculinity you need already. You don't need to get more masculinity. You may need to come alive to it inside. But the more you humanize yourself, the more you honor you have limits, the more you honor you need care, the more you honor you need love, that you need to give and receive in life, right? The more you give yourself kindness, the more you become a good man. So I would say, actually, pursue becoming human. Humanize yourself. And you will be a really, really, really good man.
Excellent advice, man. All right, let's say you get your hands on a magic phone booth a la Bill and Ted. Yeah. And usually I use the DeLorean as the example, but we're going to go with the phone booth today.
I like it. Bill and Ted's. That was a great movie.
And you can go back in time and visit 10-year-old Sam. What do you want to call?
Gosh, that's so tender right away. I think I'm drawn to just wanting to give him a hug and say, you're doing great. I think all the pressure he felt to try to fit in, right, to something and to just give him a sense of belonging, that you have everything you need. You're an amazing kid. That's what I would want to tell him. Probably just give him a hug, honestly, and celebrate who he is.
It's awesome. I wonder what he would have thought of running into you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think at 10, there's no way I could have even imagined where I would be. It felt, becoming a man felt so unbelievably far from what was possible for me. I was not an athletic kid. And there was a sense of, I felt so emasculated and so not strong and no sense of belonging to kind of the masculine world. I didn't feel welcome there. And so I think, one level, I would just like to say it's all going to work out, to him. Again, has everything worked out in my life? No, of course not. But to say, some of his core desires, to feel affirmed, to feel loved, to feel like he belonged in the world of men. I mean, I think those things, to be able to tell him, you've got everything you need, you're amazing. Just because they don't let you fit in with them, it's their stuff, not yours. To fight some of those lies that bound him to feeling he lacked something he needed, and say that's all bullshit. Yeah. You don't lack anything just because these people or those people don't accept you. It's bullshit. You're an amazing kid. It's taken me a lot of work in my own counseling to be able to love that kid, that boy well. But it's good to feel an affection for him now.
I'm always amazed at how many of my guests' 10-year-old self sound a lot like me. Oh,
dude,
awesome.
Fist bump, man. Yeah.
I think we all have the same 10-year-old self, dude.
Seriously. So true.
What is your best advice for the men listening today?
In the next week, find a sunrise or sunset and take 15 seconds and soak it in. Or build a fire, smoke a cigar, enjoy the fire, find some place, find a river, find a walk in the woods in the next week. I mean, do something to honor that you're a human being, and you are made and created for beauty and goodness. Don't take a break from pushing yourself in the grind.
I just did that last night with my group of guys that I meet with every 2 weeks. We meet every other Monday, and we kind of on a whim. We usually just meet like in a room in a building downtown. We're like, hey, let's have a fire. And so we invited a bunch of other guys that we haven't been able to get to join us. We had a fire. We just sat there. Once the sun went down, we were sitting there, and dude, it just got quiet. Everybody stopped talking and goofing off, and we were just sitting there, dude. That feeling, the coals start to get warm, and the one guy's like, "Hey, do you see that little flame, like flickering off that log over?" Like, we're just sitting there, like marveling at this one little. There's all these flames, and just one little flame just looked really pretty, and we're just sitting there, like, just look at that. It's so cool. It was just a really cool moment. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. There's something to it.
Cool.
Just sitting there with the brothers and enjoying each other's company and enjoying the moment, feeling the cool air behind you because it was fall, and then the warm air in front of you, dude. Yeah, and just
it's so good. I'm there right now.
And drinking apple cider because it's fall, So it was perfect. It was perfect. Yeah,
that's cool.
I know what you're talking about, man.
That's really cool.
Yeah, awesome. Dude, if the guys want to connect with you, they want to connect with your book, what's the best way for that to happen?
Yeah. So my book is wherever you buy your books, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, your local bookstore. The Sex Talk You Never Got, Reclaiming the Heart of Masculine Sexuality. Would love for you to read that. And then you can actually go to my website, Sam Jolman, JOLMAN.com. And I have a couple bonuses there for ordering. You can actually get a buy one, get one free right now from my publisher. So you can buy the audiobook, get the paperback copy, or buy one for a friend. And then I write on Substack. So would love to have you join me there. samjolman.substack.com. I write a lot on healthy masculinity, healthy sexuality, and do regular Zoom calls there where we could hang out and actually meet and talk. So I'd love to see you there.
Awesome. Well, guys, please make sure that you check the show notes. We'll include your links there, Sam. Let's connect with Sam and support the work he's doing. Get the book. And if you've got questions, I'm sure he'd be more than happy to answer any of them that you've got.
Absolutely.
Guys. And I'd like to have you on again sometime because I feel like we could have this much discussion and more about these topics. So,
Josh, that would be awesome. I have loved this conversation, and that would be a true joy.
Awesome. We will have you on again for sure. So I appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh.
Sam, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to talk, man. I'm so glad my wife stumbled across you on another podcast and referred me to you, and that we had a great conversation, man. I appreciate it. I appreciate you and the work you're doing, your transparency, your authenticity. It's good stuff, man. If you're listening to this, guys, and you want to connect with Sam, if you want to connect with his book or any of the other work he's doing, make sure that you check the show notes because I've got his links in there. Let's support Sam and the work he's doing so we can, we can grow and we can help him help others grow as well. Guys, make sure you join the Man Cave on Facebook. Like I said, Manlihood Man Cave, look it up. We'd love to have you in the group. Also, don't forget to join Manlihood Plus. We've got exclusive content just for you at an affordable price. It's an affordable subscription, and you're going to get content that you can't get anywhere else. So make sure you check it out. As always, I love you. I'm proud of you. And I'll see you next time.
Thanks for being part of Manlihood. Now it's time for you to rise up and take action. Join the Manlihood Man Cave, our free Facebook group, and connect with the other men on the same journey. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share that episode with a friend. For more, visit manlihood.com.